There have been so many great players to wear the CH in the Habs' 104-year history. Which players were the absolute best at their positions and worthy of being named to the Montreal Canadiens all-time 20-man NHL roster? In this video, I'll tell you who I think those 20 players are and complete my all-time Montreal Canadiens 20-man roster, plus some honorable mentions. So, welcome to Talkin' Habs, where you get your daily fix of Bleu Blanc Rouge. Hey everybody, I'm Rick. Today's video, we are doing the all-time Habs lineup, the best players of all time in the history of the Habs. And this is because I saw this article. I don't know what publication it was. I got this from Twitter, and they did their version and their list, and I didn't quite agree with it completely. It's not to say that every player on that list is a great player, but I didn't quite agree with a few of the picks and even some of the placements for them. So I decided to do my own version of this. So if you want to do your own version and get that into a video here on Talking Habs, follow these parameters: 3 scoring lines, a checking line, 3 defensive pairings, a starter and a backup, or a 1A and 1B, and send it to me, and I'm going to get that in the video very shortly as soon as I gather up all the entries. So we're going to do my version of that, and we're going to start with, obviously, scoring line 1. For scoring line 1, I didn't really disagree with that list, and I'll show you mine right now. I've got Steve Shutt on left wing. Shutt, 871 games, 408 goals, 368 assists for 776 points. I believe the first left winger, I'm not sure if there's another one that's done it, but the first left winger to score 60 goals. Steve Shutt was had an amazing shot, definitely deserving to be here. I don't know what else to say about Steve Shutt, but a great player, and he was on a great line with the right winger on this line, Guy Lafleur. Guy Lafleur had 961 games, 518 goals, 728 assists for 1,246 points. My favorite player of all time, Guy Lafleur, and I believe the best player ever to play for the Habs. He has the most points of any player to play for the Habs, and I get goosebumps still to this day when I see highlights of Guy Lafleur with his hair flying back, flying down the right wing, taking a shot. He's an amazing player. Centering that line, we got the greatest captain of all time, Mr. Class, Jean Beliveau. Beliveau played 1,125 games, 507 goals, 712 assists, 1,219 points. I believe he was a 10-time Stanley Cup winner. This guy, Beliveau, was Mr. Class, the classiest player ever to play the game, and uber talented. And I can only imagine if this was possible to have Shutt, Beliveau, and Lafleur actually play, they would be unstoppable. So next up would be, obviously, scoring line 2. Toe Blake, Elmer Locke, and the Rocket, Maurice Richard. That is the punch line, one of the most legendary line maybe in all of the NHL history. The other list left out Elmer Locke. I don't know why. I don't think that was fair. I think the punchline should be here, all intact. Toe Blake went on to be one of the greatest coaches ever in Habs history. He played 569 games, 235 goals, 292 assists for 527 points. Not too far off from a point-a-game player. Very intelligent player, tough as nails, and just a big part of this line. On the other wing was Maurice the Rocket Richard, the most legendary Habs player of all time. 978 games, 544 goals, 422 assists for 966 points. He also got, for a star player, 1,285 penalty minutes. Why? Because the Rocket had to defend himself and fight and just put up with a lot of bullshit on the ice his whole career, and he didn't back down from anybody. The most feared player from the blue line to the net, with his fiery eyes and his determination to score, and that's exactly what he did. The Rocket was a great player, and I know I have Lafleur ahead of him, but if you decide the other way around, I was going to say you're wrong. Centering that line was Elmer Locke. a friend of my grandfather's. My grandfather worked for Maisland Transport. So did Elmer Locke in the off season and after his career, and they were friends. And he was a great center. I think he's very underrated. 664 games, 215 goals, 408 assists for 623 points. Also, not too far off from a point a game player. All three of them on that line. Great players individually, but you put them together on that line and amazing, legendary punchline. For the third scoring line, I've got Mats Naslund on the left side, the pocket rocket Henri Richard centering, and on the right wing, Bernie Boom Boom Geoffrion. Mats Naslund, small player, but guy could put up points. In 8 seasons, he played 617 games here, 243 goals, 369 assists for 612 points. He's the last 100-point player for the Montreal Canadiens when he got 110 points. I don't remember the season. I believe maybe the last 40-goal scorer as well, but Mats Naslund was just pure production, consistent and productive. On the right side, we got Boom Boom Geoffrion. He got his name from the sound that the puck made when it hit the boards when he took a slap shot. Boom, boom. Won the scoring title one year, and just a very great player. I know that he was kind of hated for winning the scoring title over Rocket Richard. 766 games, 371 goals, 388 assists, pretty even, and 759 points. So to be very close to a point a game player, as was Mats Naslund. Centering that line is the pocket rocket Henri Richard. 11 cups. Nobody else will match that. 11 Stanley Cups. He played 1,258 games, 358 goals, 688 assists for 1,046 points. In my opinion, the pocket rocket was his overall game was he was a better player than his brother Maurice, the Rocket, but Maurice was obviously the better goal scorer. And between the two of them, just maybe one of the greatest, or if not the greatest, brother combination in the history of the game. Another thing for the pocket rocket, he was a small player at 5'7", 928 penalty minutes. He didn't back down from anybody, wasn't afraid of anybody, no matter what the size, and just a tough as nails player. Next up, I'm going to bring in the checking line. We could go with 4 scoring lines easily with the Montreal Canadiens, but no team has 4 scoring lines, and we had some great checking lines and checkers here in the history of the Canadiens, and this is what I think are the best 3. Bob Gainey, Guy Carbonneau, and John Ferguson. Bob Gainey was a great captain. Not the greatest GM, but a great captain and a great player for the Habs. At one point, the Russians said that Bob Gainey was the best player in the National Hockey League. I bumped into him twice, like literally. Bob Gainey, great leader and a great hockey player. On the other wing, John Ferguson, maybe in his day the most feared hockey player as far as fisticuffs. Who says that anymore? But a great fighter. If you loved Bob Probert, this was the early version of Bob Probert. He's a guy who could fight, was tough as nails, put fear in the opponent, and yet could play. He had 500 games, 145 goals, 158 assists for 303 points. He had 1,214 penalty minutes. And John Ferguson, I believe, retired a little bit early, could have played a little longer, but a great, feared hockey player and deserved to be on this line. In the center is Guy Carbonneau. Carbo was a great player, could have been a great offensive player. In junior, he put up amazing numbers. When he came to the Habs, they said, we need a defensive center, and you're going to be it. He took to it like ducks to water. In 912 games, he had 221 goals, 326 assists for 547 points. Guy Carbonneau could play against any other player and keep them in check. He could play and shut down anybody. An amazing checking center. Guy Carbonneau, Hall of Famer, deservedly so. Coached Montreal for too short a time. Bob Gainey fired him too early, And I would have loved to see what Guy Carbonneau could have done with the Habs as a coach. And he's deserving to be the center on this line. Let's move to the defensive pairings. And we'll start, obviously, with the first pairing. And I kind of think no matter who does this, you're like 99% of people are going to have Doug Harvey and Larry Robinson as the first pair. Doug Harvey, he changed the game for defensemen before Bobby Orr got here. And I don't think Bobby Orr could have been Bobby Orr without Doug Harvey being here and doing what he did. In 890 games, he had 76 goals, 371 assists for 447 points and 1,042 penalty minutes. He could control a game, speed it up, slow it down, whatever he felt he needed to do. He was able to do that. And just a great defenseman. And I don't know what else to say about him. I didn't get to see him play, but if you know your Habs history, you know Doug Harvey. On the other side, Larry Robinson. I think the best defenseman Montreal Canadiens have ever had is Larry Robinson. In 1,202 games, 197 goals, 686 assists for 883 points. And he also had a plus 708 while he was with the Habs. And I don't think that's going to ever be matched. He was a two-way defenseman because not only was he a great offensive defenseman, but the guy could play defense. He hit like a Mack truck. And if you hit him, it was described like hitting a tree. So Larry Robinson you didn't want to fight him either. He had a very few fights, but when he did, he pretty much killed the other guy. Larry Robinson, the big bird and part of the big three. And like I said, I think he's the greatest Habs defenseman ever. And on the second pairing, we've got Andrei Markov and Guy Lapointe. Andrei Markov, great defenseman. Early in his career, he had a really bad, I think, foot injury. And he missed like almost 2 years solid. And we thought, this guy's done and he's never going to be anything. He came back. He was kind of fragile for a little while. And then he just took off. And just a solid, I think a two-way defenseman. The guy could put up some points. And he was a solid stay-at-home kind of guy, too. In 990 games, which was a shame that he didn't get 10 more and they didn't sign him again. 119 goals, 453 assists for 572 points. He was amazing alongside PK Subban on the power play, just feeding him pucks. It was a great combo. He mentored Subban. On the other side, you got Guy Lapointe. Guy Lapointe, part of the big three. He was the two-way guy in the big three, I think. That was his job. He could play defense and he'd get you offense. He scored some really big goals. Remember how many games? The winning goal, Guy Lapointe from the point with a slap shot. 777 games, 166 goals, 406 assists for 572 points, and just a great defenseman. He could play with anybody on any pairing and against anybody. One of those, like I said, the big three, and it'll give you a lot of minutes and just great play. All right, let's move on to the third pair, Serge Savard and Chris Chelios. Serge Savard was the stay-at-home guy on the big three, but part of the big three, the Senator, that's what he was known as, 917 games, 100 goals, 312 assists for 412 points. Early in his career, he broke his leg, I believe, by crashing into the net. In those days, the nets didn't give way. And I believe he did it again the next year. So I think his second and third year, he suffered broken legs. They didn't know if he would have a full career, but he came back and was just great his whole career. Steady, dependable, Serge Savard, hard to score against, and great Habs defenseman. On the other side, Chris Chelios. Now, Chelios was only here for 7 years. When Montreal traded him, for some reason, they thought his career would be over soon because of the nightlife the kind of lifestyle he led, and the way he played the game. He was tough, he hit, and he was super talented. So he was, he was an offensive defenseman, I do believe, but could play defense. 402 games here in Montreal, 72 goals, 237 assists for 309 points, and definitely traded him away too early. They got Denis Savard for him. Great player, but at the end of his career, and quite frankly, would have rather have that they kept Chelios here because he went on to play like another 15 years. If you like this, give a thumbs up, leave a comment, and please share this video. Now we'll get to the starting goalie, which, you know, in this case, it's a 1A because both of these goalies are going to be great. You know that. So let's start with the starting goalie. And for me, I've got St. Patrick Roy. Patrick Roy. I saw both Patrick Roy and Ken Dryden pretty much their whole careers. And I got Patrick Roy there. A money goalie, if there ever was one. When Patrick Roy decided they're not scoring against me again, they don't score. I don't know how he did it, and if you were in a game 7 in a Stanley Cup final or any series, that's the goalie you want. If you got to absolutely win the game, I want Patrick Roy in nets. In 551 games for Montreal, he had a record of 289 wins, 175 losses, and 66 ties, I think. I'm not sure if it's ties, if it was before that or not. Overall, in his career, because I couldn't break this down, a 2.54 goals against and a 9.10 save percentage. Kind of average, but you got to take into account when he played. Goalies weren't that good like they are today. Every goalie, the backups and everything can produce better numbers sometimes than he did. But money goalie, you wanted to win the game, Patrick Roy was your guy. Who's backing up Patrick Roy? For me, it is without a doubt Ken Dryden. Ken Dryden, stand-up goalie, because that's the style of the era. And when you watch it today, it doesn't look great. Ken Dryden was a great goalie, made saves like you couldn't believe. In 397 games here in Montreal, and that's the only place he played, 258 wins, 57 losses, and 74 ties. Just think of that. Now, if you want to say Ken Dryden had a great team in front of him, that's why he was great, that's wrong. In the 73-74 series year, Dryden took a year off to study law. Montreal Canadiens had won the Cup the year before, but they didn't do well the next year with Bunny LaRocque and, Wayne Thomas and Michel Place. So Ken Dryden was an integral part of the success of the Montreal Canadiens in the 70s. He had 46 shutouts, a 2.24 goals against, a 9.19 save percentage, and he won 6 Stanley Cups in his 8-year career. So think about that. That'll never be matched again. It's time for some honorable mentions. I'll go through these as quick as I can. We'll start off with the centers. First up is Saku Koivu. 792 games, 191 goals, 450 assists, 641 points for Koivu, 623 penalty minutes. He was tough. He didn't back down from anybody. And if he didn't get hurt, his knee taken out by Jim Cummins early in his career when he was leading the NHL in points, this guy would have put up amazing numbers, and he would have been maybe the greatest center that we ever had. He had that capability, but that knee injury was never the same after that. Next, I've got Ivan Cornway. Now, a lot of people will tell you he's a winger. And yes, he played wing, but he also played center, because my memories of him when he was captain near the end of his career was taking faceoffs and playing center. So I've got him in here. He was a forward. He wasn't designated as any position. In 968 games, 428 goals, 435 assists, so even there, and 863 points. The Roadrunner, fastest player in the NHL pretty much at the time, and the only player I've ever seen on a breakaway, breaking on the goalie, and the way he deked him out was by flipping his stick over to the other hand and taking a shot. And it was amazing. The Roadrunner, just an amazing player. Next up, Jacques Lemaire. 853 games, 366 goals, 469 assists, 835 points. Jacques Lemaire, the mayor, very underrated, I think, because not everybody talks about him when you talk about great centers here. Just look at the production. He played with Lafleur. He played with Schutt. That was a great line, and he was a big part of that. Next up, Edouard Newsy Lalonde, a very legendary name and player. He didn't play here a lot, but I don't think they played a lot of games in the season back then. 98 games played, 124 goals. I've never heard of a player have more goals than games. I don't think ever. Doesn't matter how many games they played. I've never heard of that. Also, 27 assists. I think that was at a time when they only gave 1 assist to a goal, and 151 overall points. Just a legendary name. And that 124 goals in 98 games puts him on this list. Next, we'll go to the left wings. I've got Shane Corson leading the way. I love Shane Corson. When I play hockey, I try to wear number 27 because of Shane Corson. 662 games, 168 goals, 255 assists for 423 points, 1,341 penalty minutes to go along with that because he was tough. He stood up for his teammates and was not afraid to fight anybody if he had to. Shane Corson, absolutely love this guy. His second go around with Montreal wasn't as great, and he wasn't here that long, and I'd rather forget it and only remember his first time around. Next up, Aurel Joliat, Howie Morenza's winger, a small guy. He only weighed 135 pounds, but put up 757 penalty minutes because he was literally tough as nails and uber talented. 654 games, 270 goals, 190 assists for 460 points, and just an amazing talent back in the day. After that, we got Dickie Moore. Dickie Moore won a scoring title with a broken wrist. Just a great player. I don't know I didn't see him play a lot. A local kid from Park Extension, 654 games, 254 goals, 340 assists, and 594 points. And just a great player. Like I said, I didn't see him play, but deserved to be on this list. After that, we got the right wings. On the right side, I'm leading off with Claude Provost. I don't remember Claude Provost playing, although I should have seen him a little bit as a kid. 1,005 games, 254 goals, 335 assists for 589 points. I think he was a checking winger. And like I said, he's a legendary name, Claude Provost, but I didn't see him a lot. But I believe he's deserving to be on this list. After that, we got Bobby Rousseau. Bobby Rousseau was a winger and very talented winger. I think underrated a bit in 643 games, 200 goals, 322 assists for 522 points, and just an all-around good player. I don't remember him at all, but deserving to be here. Next up is Alex Kovalev. Alex Kovalev, all the talent in the world, just didn't want to bring it every game. But when he did, he was absolutely amazing. 314 games in Montreal, 103 goals, 161 assists, and 264 points. And just a lot. I mean, he was the last Hab to be a point-a-game player when he had 84 points. And just a great player, just frustrating as hell some games when he just wouldn't bring it. And could have been even greater than he was and could have been on the list, on the actual list and not on the honorable mentions. Next up, we're going to tackle the defenseman. All right, we're going to lead with Emile Butch Bouchard, the father of Pierre Bouchard. Great stay-at-home defenseman, tough as nails, good fighter, 785 games, 49 goals, 145 assists for 194 points, and a legendary defenseman here in Montreal. I didn't get to see him play, obviously. He played in the 30s and 40s, but deserves to be here. After that, we got Jacques Laperriere. Yeah, when I get an edict, it's a bad one. I take Hinstantine. I'll never forget that commercial. Rookie of the year, I believe, won the Calder Trophy, 692 games, 40 goals, 242 assists, 282 points. He also was an assistant coach here for many years, and just a great player and very underrated. Tall and gangly and just very underrated player. After that, I got Lyle Odeline, Odie. Odie was just a fun player to watch for some reason. Stay-at-home guy, didn't put up a lot of points in 420 games. Love the number. 20 goals, 75 assists for 95 points, 1,367 penalty minutes. He fought anybody that he had to. He stuck up for his teammates, and he was tough to play against. Lyle Odeline, very underrated defenseman, I believe, here in Montreal, but deserve it to be on this list for me. And that leaves the goalies. Can't leave Carey Price out of here. Carey Price, if you wanted to put him as 1 or 2, I wouldn't argue with you. I'm the most acrobatic goalie I've ever seen. Positionally, puck tracking, just an amazing goalie. It's too bad that he'd never won a cup, but I do believe he will make the Hall of Fame. And the Habs may retire his sweater, even though he didn't win a cup. But we'll have to see. But Carey Price, I'm talking about him like he's retired. He's not officially retired, but I don't think he'll ever suit up again. Behind him, we've got Jacques Plante. Jacques Plante, the inventor of the goalie mask, the first one to ever wear one. And just a great goalie. Played 22 seasons, I believe. Most of them here in Montreal. 556 games, 311 wins, 134 losses, 108 ties, 82 shutouts. And his lifetime goals against was 238, and he had a 919 save percentage for his in 22 seasons to put up those kind of numbers consistently. Great goaltender. Finally on the list, we got George Hainsworth in 314 games, and this was in the 20s and 30s. 165 wins for Montreal, 96 losses, 53 ties, 67 shutouts. What made him so great was in 1928-29, he had played 44 games and he had recorded 22 shutouts with a 0.92 goals against. Amazing numbers. Never will that ever be seen again. And just a legendary Habs goalie amongst a bunch of legendary Habs goalies. But George Hainsworth, in his career, a 193 goals against. They didn't keep the save percentage, so I don't have that. But deserve it to be on this list. All right, so I'm going to remind you, if you want to get your list in a Talking Habs video, use these parameters: 3 scoring lines, a checking line, 3 defensive pairings, and a 1A, 1B, or starter and backup. Send it to me in my email, which is in the description, or in a comment in the video, and I will gather them up and get a video going. So thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for watching. If you like this, give a thumbs up, leave a comment, and please share this video.